pretty notorious cheap motel in Seattle on I-99. The tenants had asked, the landlords refused to make repairs. There was just a shocking amount of neglect there. They're basically slumlords. There was 4 kinds of mold in one place, like every color of the rainbow mold. People heating their apartment with their oven being open, roaches, leaks, and broken toilet. So we did a demand delivery with one of the tenants and about 25 people and gave him a deadline as usual. And right before the deadline, the landlords went around and made all the repairs that were listed on the letter that we had handed in, but no more than what was listed. And there's, in every apartment it seemed like there was something going on. And one resident called us really happy right after they had come in. She told us, they told her, don't talk to those Solidarity Network people, they're communists. And then they fixed my toilet. Strategically, what we do is we create a sustained series of actions targeting a particular boss or landlord that are designed to hurt them and to keep the hurt on until they give in. In other words, we work to create a series of actions that make it easier or cheaper for the boss or landlord to give in than to not give in. The way we think about winning is winning a fight like this depends on the relationship between how hard it is for the boss or landlord to give in to our specific demand and how much we can actually hurt them. We might have demand like, leave John alone, stop threatening to sue him. So that doesn't cost them any money, it's just kind of back off from the threat. Versus, for example, increase people's wages by a lot. So that's a pretty tough demand to make of an employer. They often really don't want to do that. So that would be on the hard end of that. On this axis, how much can we hurt them? That ranges from we can embarrass them to we can put them out of business. Some examples of things that fall in here would be, say, we're asking the Seattle Housing Authority to fire all their building managers because all their building managers are real jerks, right? Or whatever the case may be. That would be a pretty hard demand, and there's not a lot that we can do in some ways for the Seattle Housing Authority. They're big, they're not profit-driven necessarily. So that would be up here. That would be a really hard fight to win. Somewhat of an easier fight for us would be asking a struggling restaurant to hand over $500 in unpaid wages. That might be a bit hard for them because if they're struggling, they maybe don't have a lot of money, but it's possible. Since they're a struggling restaurant, they're public, we can go out and pick it. This restaurant I'm thinking of was in a tourist area, so it's like prime for the kind of tactics that we do. So we could pretty much put them out of business. So that would be over here. Anything over in this area is winnable at the moment. And anything up here where we can't put a lot of pressure on them and it's really hard for them to give in is not winnable. And we hope that as we get bigger, these things will actually shift. What is winnable will shift as we are able to get bigger and put more pressure on bosses and landlords.
We're not a social service. We're not someone who you call and we help to take care of this for you. When someone comes to us, we have an expectation that they join us. If my landlord steals my deposit, they're going to come help me fight my landlord. And in the same way, I'm going to help them fight their boss or whatever the case may be.
John was a bicycle delivery guy for Pita Pit, which is the sandwich shop, basically. And this Pita Pit withheld nearly 20% of John's pay for taxes, they said. When tax time came around, they said, no, you're a contractor, we didn't withhold any money. So they had basically given him a 20% pay cut through this little mistake, or whatever you like to call it. And so John joined the Seattle Solidarity Network and asked for support. The form that took is we started off with a demand delivery action where we get a bunch of people together and we go in We deliver a letter to the boss saying, here's what you've done wrong, here's what you need to do to correct it, you have it X number of days, or we will take further action, and they can go to our website to learn what kind of further action that might be. So we deliver the demand, and then here's us all posing, trying to look mean outside the front after that demand delivery. So that gives you a sense of how many people were at that action. The boss didn't give in right away. Sometimes they do, this one didn't. And so our boycott action began. Picketing commenced. We started with a small picket. We were prepared to do pickets twice a week for as long as it took. That was our plan. At lunchtime, you know, when the students were going to get their lunch and that sort of thing. Here's our first picket on Tuesday. The boss was very upset. He came out and tried to grab my picket sign from me and said, no, you can stay here, but you can't keep these signs, and you know, that sort of thing, which of course was wrong, and threatened to call the cops. Of course, we say, oh, fine, go ahead. Totally turned away lots of business. Then we came back on the Thursday and had another picket, so much larger pickets, we were escalating. And after about an hour of that, the boss called John in 3 times. Here you see he's started to have enough, so he called John in, first said, this is crazy, you should go away, you need to tell these people to leave, and by the way, you're totally killing my business. So John came out and we were like, great, okay, we're doing our job. Maybe a half an hour later, 20 minutes later, something like that, this guy called John back in and said, how about half the money? So John came out and he said, what do you guys think? And we said, well, you know, does that feel like a victory to you? And he stayed out. He didn't even go back and tell the guy no. And then finally the boss came out again and had to ask him to come in again. And John came out here holding a check. Here's John. So for the full amount. And later this check was cashed.